That for 5 years. I left the show for 5 years, had a couple kids, and then went back to Saturday Night Live in '85 and worked from '85 to '95 on the show, and I wrote a few movies during that time, including a drama called When a Man Loves a Woman I co-wrote, and then I wrote a movie called Stewart Saves His Family. It was a comedy. And then I left the show and I started writing books. I was still living in New York because my kids were, teenagers. And so I stayed in New York and I wrote books, or I guess my son was 11, but my daughter was 16, 15. And wrote a lot of political books about the right wing, and they were best-selling books. New York Times. I wrote 3 New York Times #1 bestsellers, and then started a radio show, and came out here to about 3 years ago when I became an empty nester. My wife and I became empty nesters. In the meantime, I'd come back to Minnesota all the time for various reasons. One, to visit my parents when they were healthy, and also to do politics, because I was a big people like Wendy Anderson, who used to be the governor here, was someone I campaigned for, and a lot of people, but especially Paul Wellstone. And I was a friend of Paul's and came back and campaigned for Paul a lot. And his death affected me like it did a lot of people in Minnesota. And I came back in part to explore running, and started doing work, building on the political work I'd already done in the state, and doing a lot of fundraising because people knew me from my showbiz career. And so I would go around the state and speak at dinners, and a lot of people would show up, and would raise money for local Democratic units, and then I started this run.
Okay. I mean, nowadays, we watch TV. We see, we know who you are, but we see a lot of negative ad on TV, regarding your work in the past. So my question is, who is the real Al? You can just tell us.
Well, it's not the Al that you see in the Norm Coleman commercials. As I say, I started doing comedy in high school. So I have basically a 40-year career, and they have taken a few things mainly out of context and tried to make that about my career. And I think it's very telling that an incumbent senator would spend so much time doing negative ads about an opponent, as opposed to talking about his record achievements, about his achievements. And that's because he doesn't have many achievements. And but he has a lot of money. He has a lot of money that he's gotten from the oil companies, and from the pharmaceutical companies, and the insurance companies, and from a lot of special interest groups. And he's using that money to buy ads to say awful things about me. I'm a great guy. You want to know who the real Al is? I'm a guy who has 2 unbelievably great kids. One's 27, one's 23. My daughter graduated from Harvard. My son graduated from Princeton. My son graduated in mechanical engineering. My daughter graduated in sociology. She immediately went to teach in the Bronx, to teach in an inner city school for 3 years, and now she does early childhood education. Now she's campaigning for me. If you met my wife and my kids, and you bring them out to this area, you would know that I'm a parent and a husband and a good guy. The books I've written, I wrote because I didn't like what was coming out of Newt Gingrich, and I didn't like them wanting to unravel the social safety net. I didn't like the view of right-wing Republicans on all kinds of issues. And that's, you could read one of, I mean, I'm not saying you have to read one of my books, but my books are available, and you can get some idea of who I am from those. And to me, this run for the Senate is a natural progression of my career. I then did a radio show for 3 years, and it was very substantive. I've done 7 USO tours. I've been to Iraq 4 times to entertain the troops. I've been to Afghanistan 4 times, to Kosovo and Bosnia, and I love my country, and I don't like the direction it's been going. And I don't like the foreign policy that we've had the last 7 years, and I don't like what President Bush has been doing, and I don't like what Norm Coleman has been doing. And Norm Coleman, as far as I'm concerned, is a man who doesn't stand for anything. He stands for trying to find out what people want him to say, and then he says it. And I don't know if that's been your observation, but it's been the observation of a lot of people.
Can I just come in?
Yes.
I'm not trying to interrupt you. I watch almost all your ads, and you speak out against big oil companies. What assurance can you give us that elected big oil will not visit you?
Well, big oil, look, Norm Coleman may believe that big oil is the way to go, the way to, the way to do our energy policy. I mean, he keeps saying that's what we need to do is drill, drill, drill. I don't.